Hey, welcome back to the Savvy Successful Mompreneur Podcast. Today's episode is not light. It's not fluffy. It's not trendy, but it's necessary. Because today we're talking about something almost no one in entrepreneurship talks about out loud. The friendships, the relationships, and the people you quietly have to let go of when you start becoming who you're meant to be. Not because you're mean, not because you think you're better, because you're not, and not because you don't love them, but because you've grown. And they haven't grown in that same direction. Think of it like a flower garden. You might be growing towards the sun, but they like shade, so they're growing towards the shade, or vice versa. It's not a bad thing. It's just reality. And if you're a mompreneur, whether you run an online business, a brick and mortar, a side hustle, a farm, a storefront, a service, a brand, a dream, this is something every single one of us will go through. And no one prepares you for how deeply it actually hurts. So today, we're going to talk about it, why it happens, what it feels like, and how to know when it's time, and how to do it without the guilt, and how to make peace with the loneliness that follows. Because it does get lonely before it gets aligned, and that's completely normal. Let's start here. You didn't change. You became more of who you really are. And that's what makes it so painful. When you start building a business, stepping into leadership, becoming disciplined, thinking long term, protecting your time, protecting your energy, protecting your home, your mindset, you start operating differently. You stop gossiping. You stop complaining. You stop living weekend to weekend. You stop trauma bonding. You stop participating in conversations that go nowhere. And without realizing it, you outgrow environments that used to feel normal. You start noticing things you've never noticed before. The negativity, the excuses, the lack of ambition, the criticism disguised as jokes, the subtle digs when you talk about your goals, the eye rolls when you say you're busy working. You start feeling drained instead of filled. And that's the first sign. Not anger, not a fight, not betrayal, just exhaustion after being around that person or people. That is your nervous system telling you this relationship no longer feels safe for who you're becoming. And here's where mompreneurs struggle. Because we are loyal, we're empathetic, we see the good in people. We don't want to hurt anyone. So instead of leaving, we shrink. We downplay our success. We stop talking about our goals. We make ourselves smaller so others can feel comfortable. And let me tell you something. You cannot build a big life while making yourself small. At some point, you realize the cost of keeping the friendship is higher than the grief of losing it. And that realization is heartbreaking because these aren't random people. These are childhood friends, family members, old coworkers, people who knew you before you were this version of you. And you feel guilty, like you're abandoning them, but you're not. You're choosing alignment over history. And that is one of the hardest choices a growing woman can ever make. Here's the truth most people won't say. Some people only fit the version of you that was surviving. They don't fit the version of you that is scaling. They fit the version of you that was stressed, broke, overwhelmed, complaining, dreaming. They don't fit the version of you that is disciplined, focused, calm, intentional, and building. And it's not their fault, and it's not your fault, but it is reality. You will notice this especially when you stop gossiping, you stop complaining, you stop oversharing, or maybe it's you stopped drinking or stopped partying. You start protecting your time. You start saying, I can't, I'm working. That's when the tension starts. That's when you hear, you've changed. You're no fun anymore. You're always busy. But what they really mean, you don't fit the old version of our relationship anymore. And that's okay. It still hurts. It's allowed to hurt. Because grief doesn't require someone to be a bad person. You can grieve good people who are no longer good for your direction. And this is where most mompreneurs get stuck. They wait for a blow up. They wait for a fight. They wait for drama because that feels easier to justify leaving. But the truth is, sometimes nothing happens. You just outgrow the dynamic. You just grow apart. You stop messaging. You stop talking. Before you know it, years have gone by. And that quiet realization is harder than a dramatic ending. Because you don't have a villain. You just have the distance, the time. Let's talk about the signs that it's time. You feel heavy after spending time with them. You censor yourself around them. You have to watch what you say and do. You feel misunderstood constantly. They mock or minimize your business. They don't celebrate your wins. They only reach out when they need something. You feel behind in life after being with them. That's not friendship anymore. That's emotional weight. And as a mompreneur, you cannot afford emotional weight. You need emotional fuel. Now, here's the part no one likes to say. When you cut these ties, there will be a season of loneliness because your old circle's gone. And your new circle, it hasn't formed yet. This is the in-between. It's the halfway between rooms. And this is where many women run back to old friendships. Because the quiet, it feels uncomfortable. But the quiet is where alignment is forming. You have to be brave enough to sit in the lonely season without going backwards. Because backwards feels familiar. But familiar, it's what you outgrew. And you don't need to make an announcement. You don't need a speech. You don't need a dramatic exit. You can simply respond slower, share less, see them less, protect your space more. Distance is often kinder than confrontation. And if the guilt creeps in, remind yourself that you're allowed to evolve. You're allowed to protect your energy. You're allowed to choose relationships that match where you're going, not where you've been. One day, you look around and realize you're surrounded by people who talk about ideas, who respect your time, who understand why you're busy, who are building too, who inspire you, who don't drain you. And you'll realize that the lonely season was worth it because growth, just like growing a flower, it requires pruning. Pruning looks cruel before it looks beautiful. If this episode hit home for you, you're not cold. You're not selfish. You're definitely not arrogant. You are becoming aligned. And that requires courage most people never have. I'm proud of you for growing, even when it hurts. Be sure to share this episode, tag your friends, like, subscribe, and share. So that way I can keep helping busy moms like you grow their businesses. I'll see you in the next episode of Savvy Successful Mompreneur yours. In the meantime, keep building, keep becoming, keep protecting your peace. Because when you're growing, it requires a lighter circle. See you next time.